weekend, so I thought we could use this episode to make a good Irish stew. So a few things you'll need as far as ingredients go are a piece of lamb or marbly beef roast like I have here, some olive oil, some beef broth, some kosher salt, black pepper, some bay leaves. I have 2 peeled red onions, 4 peeled carrots, 4 peeled potatoes, a few cloves of garlic, a little bit of flour, and two beers, one for drinking and one for cooking. And then as far as equipment goes, all you really need is a spatula, a vegetable peeler, a bowl, and then a heavy bottom pot, which I have preheating over here with some olive oil in it. So let's get cooking. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is to break this roast down into bite-sized chunks. So you're just going to take your regular old knife here and just cut it. So we've broken this piece of beef down, we've cut it down into some good bite-sized chunks. Now what I've done is just taken a little bit of black pepper and crack it all over this beef here. And then maybe a good 3-finger pinch of some coarse kosher salt and just sprinkle it over this beef. And then what you want to do is grab your bowl that we talked about earlier and then just take all this beef and toss it in here in the bowl with some flour. Just a little bit of flour. We're not trying to really get it covered in flour. We just want to get a little light coating. And if you don't quite have enough, sprinkle a little bit at a time. And then you can pick up your bowl and give it a little toss if you'd like to. But you can see we're not getting a whole lot of flour on here. We're not deep frying it. We're just getting a little light coating of flour on with our salt and pepper because that gives a good crust on your meat. And now we're going to work in batches. You don't want to cook all the meat at once because it's going to crowd the pan and it will start to steam the meat rather than cook it and get that good caramely crust on there that you want. So I'm just going to grab a small handful, take a few pieces out, and then just drop it in this preheated pot here. I have some olive oil going in this pot at about 4.5, closer to 5, and you just want to cook it for just a couple of minutes until you notice it start to get brown and caramel on every side. And then once this has been going for a few minutes, what you want to do is just grab a spatula, maybe a fork also for the assist if you need a little bit of room in there, and just take a couple of, or even a pair of tongs will be great, and you just come and turn this meat over. And we're just going to cook it on each side once. We're not trying to turn it or even necessarily cook it all the way through here. We just want to get a good crust on it. Now while your meat is browning, you can use that as an opportunity to start chopping some vegetables. I've got a couple of onions, garlic, and a shallot here. And so what I do with the onions is I just start lengthwise, give it a couple good lengthwise cuts. Then you can turn it and go horizontal with it. And then turn it again, and then just go vertical. And you have perfectly chopped onions, every single time. Alexa, are shallots a root vegetable?
No, shallots are not root vegetables.
Alright, so now that all of our meat is browned, it's time to start cooking down some of these vegetables. So I'm just going to grab them a couple handfuls at a time. And I think I need a bigger pot for this. I definitely need a bigger pot for this. So earlier in the video, you may have been thinking to yourself, it's an awful small pot for a lot of ingredients. There's no way he's going to fit all of that in there. And you'd be right. I ended up having to switch to this big pot, which is normally reserved for brewing beer. But today, it's an Irish stew pot. So I've added about 3/4 of this broth. I'm going to add the rest of it now. So this is about 4 cups of beef broth that I've used. I've also poured in a full Guinness already, but I want a little bit more. So I opened up another one. I'm going to pour just a little bit of this in here. Just a couple of ounces, just estimated. And now you have another drinking beer. So the idea is now is you want to turn the heat up on high, maybe like a 9 or a 10, get it boiling, and add the potatoes and carrots. And then once it's boiling, reduce it down to a simmer, and then add your beef back into it, cover it, and let it simmer for about an hour. Alright, so now that our mixture is boiling, we're going to take these carrots and these potatoes and add everything right in there. Alright, so our potatoes and our carrots are in there boiling now. So we're going to add this meat into it, add everything back into this pot, juices and all. Grab your comically large spoon and give everything a quick stir. Now we're going to reduce this to a low, maybe about a 2.5, and let it simmer. Grab your pot lid, give it just a partial cover, let it vent a little bit, and then let this simmer for the better part of an hour. And then we'll come back and see how it's done. In the meantime, we're going to try to make some authentic Irish brown bread. So we'll see how that turns out. Click the link here to see how it goes. Alright guys, here we are about an hour later with some homemade stew, some homemade brown bread, and of course we've got the Guinness flowing all day long. Now, you got St. Patrick's Day handled. You're going to post pictures of this online and your friends are going to say, man, I wish I had some of that right now. I think these bad jokes are what drove the snakes out of Ireland. Don't drink and drive, guys. Stay safe. Until next time.